Good evening. Welcome. Tonight is Tuesday, April the 11th. This is a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to set the ballot. If you'll all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming this evening. I'm going to turn it over to the town manager's office to walk us through your thoughts on the ballot. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The selectmen have copies of each of the items that needs to be considered for inclusion in the ballot, and a separate page for each one with the exception of the charter issues. I think the one on top is relates to the water treatment system. The second page, wastewater management design piece. Then the ballot question regarding the third page has both water and wastewater integrated, if that's the pleasure of the board. Then the third page has the wind turbine article, and that suggested language, followed by all of the charter review matters. And then you have correspondence received from Joyce Johnson as well on the nuclear issue. So those are the items that the board has in front of you. And the thought is for the board to agree on positioning of each one of these, or excuse me, the ballot language on each one, and then finally the positioning of each one. We'd hoped to have a sample ballot, but did not have that, did not receive that back today.
I think it's important for the board to note, and for folks out there to realize that this is a very lengthy ballot because of not only our local election, but the Charter Review Committee ballot questions that will be placed on the ballot this year after a lengthy process and a lengthy review. So I'll open it up to discussion to the board about the regard to the ballot questions and whether or not the order that you think they should appear, whether we should combine any, or whether we should leave them to stand by themselves. It's my understanding that it is possible to get all three of the money ballot questions on the front page, including our local elections. So the back page of the ballot, a two-sided ballot, would be in fact all of the charter review and charter questions. So I'll open it up to discussion. Pat?
Well, I see that we have the three issues related to the water treatment system, the comprehensive wastewater management plan, and two of them related to wastewater. One, permitting the wastewater treatment system and to pay the cost of design and construction, and the other one is what? Pay the cost of design? Are they the same?
The other one combines the two on page 3. The first one is water, the second one is wastewater, as standalone.
And what's the third one then?
Combining both in a single ballot question, if that's the desire
I
of the board.
thought we had really talked about maybe putting all three of them in the same question.
Well, there's two. The third one is the wind turbine issue. There's only two.
Yeah.
It's wastewater and water filtration.
Okay.
There's not a third.
All right, then combining wastewater and water filtration in the same question. I think it's really important that they be in the same ballot question.
Okay.
Well, no, you
okay.
go ahead.
No, I'm just going to...
I'll give my reasons later. I'll
Okay,
just hear what others have to say first.
Okay.
Yeah.
And anyone else have thoughts? Go ahead.
I think they should be separate. I think we're looking at two significantly different issues, although we could argue that they both deal with water quality. One deals with wastewater, one deals with drinking water, and I think more importantly, there may be some philosophical objections to the wastewater. We saw some of that during town meeting. And my concern is that any concerted effort to defeat the wastewater proposition could in fact affect the drinking water. I don't think anyone disagrees that we need to address the drinking water issue. I think piggybacking the wastewater on top of that is sort of disingenuous, and it runs the risk, and we've seen this before, where items have been combined into a question, and then the question fails because the opposition to one or two items within the question ends up scuttling the whole thing. My 2 cents.
Go ahead.
Doug?
I understand the concern about the piggybacking. I just think this is much more of one issue. The idea of building a fantastic top-of-the-line filtration system to filter water that may be infected by our own wastewater. I see that there's a conflict, and it is one water problem that we have of our drinking water that gets affected by our wastewater, and I see that as one comprehensive plan. The two groups have worked very closely together, and I would hope that we could see it as one plan that's working together.
I understand the arguments, but I have to tend to agree with Brent. I think they should be separate. I think we've been down this road before, and I don't know what issue it was, where I think something failed, and unfortunately, the other part of the question went down with it. I understand that they go hand in hand, but I really think the voters would like to be able to vote on them separately. And if there's anything, or any credibility left with me after the last few nights, anything that's left, it's, they like specificity, and I think they showed they like things separated out, and I think I'm going to agree with Brent that they should be separate, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I do think this is a matter of opinion. I mean, obviously. We all have our ideas about how things may pass or may not pass. You know, you do the kind of the, after the ballot is over, and you look at it and you say, well, there was one time when they were separate, and some of them didn't pass and some did, and there were other times when they were all lumped together and nothing passed. But I agree with the reasons that Doug suggested as well, that this is one issue. Water, wastewater is clearly one issue, and they are two different projects, but they are still, I mean, we live on a sole source aquifer. We walk on it. We walk on our drinking water source every single day. We put anything and everything in the ground, things we shouldn't put in the ground, and then we take the water out of the ground and we drink it. And it's, so it is, they do go together, and I think people will see the connectivity, if you will, of the two issues, that they do go together when they see them together on the ballot. That's what I would think. I know I have heard from members of the Water Quality Management Committee, and my understanding is that they would, I think, prefer that it be all one question. I don't want to speak for them, but that was my understanding.
Would the chairman of the Water Quality Management Committee like to make a comment on that?
Is he here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The lady's correct. I think we work in unison. Obviously, our wastewater and pond opening and pond quality issues have worked in unison with the filtration argument from day one. Remember, the first time it came to this board, it came as a package. We looked at the availability of funds through the window of opportunity and ascertained the amount that was available, and the two projects worked together to come in with a package that filled that amount, and both were able to be carried out within that amount. So that was the first time it came to this board as a package, and we've worked closely ever since with both departments. I guess I would call your attention to the ballot question that went on last year, or 2 years ago, in 2011, the one that funded the $2.7 million for all the alternatives and the sewer design that we're doing now. And that, well, it was one question that only referenced the comprehensive wastewater management plan. Within it, it had half a dozen very different projects, ranging from pond opening to shellfish to eco toilets. So I don't think anybody thought the voters were being confused or underinformed with that question, essentially we have the same issue today.
Okay. Brent?
First of all, nobody's suggesting, I think, that voters are confused or uninformed. In fact, I'm suggesting the opposite, that the voters are sharp enough to understand when we're trying to lump things together that don't actually have any relation. The fact of the matter is the only relation that these two have to each other. We can argue the water, wastewater issue. The suggestion really comes down to the finances, and obviously it's the window of opportunity. Long Pond and the quality of water out of Long Pond has nothing to do with the wastewater projects that are being proposed here. And the wastewater projects that were lumped together last year were in fact all wastewater-related projects. We did not, for example, lump together all of those projects with the money required for the design study, the $800,000 that we did with this plant. Therefore, it doesn't seem logical at all to ask the design funds for this plant to be lumped in with the design funds for a sewer system when the two are not connected, other than the fact that the water coming out of one is going to end up in the ground in another.
I understand what both Brent and David are speaking of, and I think I can relate that. We had a whole list of items at one point in time that was coming forward as a debt exclusion, and the truth be told, it was a door at the fire station in North Falmouth that took the entire debt exclusion down. It was one item within the entire debt exclusion that took it down. However, I will also say that I would be hypocritical if I didn't go by what I had to say at town meeting. We're one community, and in this one community, we help different parts of this community to move forward. At this point in time, we're paying 100% of this sewer design. We're paying 100%, meaning the entire community, of the design of the water filtration plant. At some point in time, that's going to stop, because the folks who are not going to tie to the sewer system are not going to pay the entire bill for those folks who are. There's got to be some kind of give and take there. When that comes, who knows? We'll get to that point, and we've talked about some form of betterments. It'll be a percentage, I'm sure. But in the stages, these stages, I've been steadfast in saying that we need to be able to have a plan to be able to put an actual number on it. I think the numbers we have now are relatively vague still as we move forward. And without an actual design, we can't put a number on it. We can't figure out what folks are going to have to pay. So in the effort of being consistent in my part, I think I can support putting the items together on this. I will make one comment, though, before I say that. The comment is, if they were separated and one wins, one loses, we don't lose the window of opportunity, meaning we can accelerate the borrowing in the first year to take up the entire window of the opportunity, versus the other way, if they both go down, we do lose the window of opportunity. It's just that folks have to understand that. So there's a case to be made for that. If we separate them and only one of them wins, we could come back next year and would have a larger window of opportunity for the other project. So there's some value to that, and I'd probably throw that out as part of the discussion. I would tend to think that combining them would be the best, but it's a crapshoot, meaning that we really have to do our homework in doing that, because you lose this window of opportunity, folks will have to come to the realism that their taxes will go up after this year if we come back again. So I'm talking to the board. I want to talk through this as an option.
So what you're saying is, even if one failed and the other didn't, we'd spend the money anyway,
We would spend that same amount of
if
money.
they were separated.
If they were
But I think your first point, though, was the one that really caught my attention, and that is, we are a community that has two serious issues. One is related to clean drinking water, and the other is the issue of wastewater. We know we're under a consent agreement on the wastewater issue. We have to have a plan, and we have to have some action on it by December. So it isn't like we can keep putting it off. And as that wonderful presentation that the wastewater quality management committee had, or the water quality management committee had last night at town meeting, going back to 1927. If you keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, then it just keeps costing more money. And we know we have to do it. We really don't have a choice, because not doing anything is not an option. It is just not an option. Our estuaries, our waterways, our embayments, they'll all be polluted beyond repair the more we keep delaying it. And we need to move forward on both. And we should start thinking about water quality, of water, drinking water and wastewater as they go together, because they do go together.
Okay.
Doug wanted to say
Go ahead,
something
Deb.
too.
Yep.
I had a question that actually relates to either the first one or Article 3, as to why we are listing as a water treatment system or a water filtration plant. I would be, if I were reading that article and as a voter, I'd want to know which is it we're getting.
I didn't write the article, so, I mean, that was written between town council
And that may have been before we had decided which one we were recommending. But I thought filtration was absolutely what we're going with.
Yeah.
It's an N, not an or? It should be and. A water treatment system and a water filtration plant.
Okay. Great. Which isn't really the issue we were debating right now,
No.
but I just wanted to
Right,
clarify
right.
that for
Okay.
whichever one we're going to go with.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I guess I would suggest that if we're going to put these two together, that we should put the windmills together too, seeing as that we first put Wind 1 up in order to pay for the electricity at the wastewater plant. And so you could even lump that in and suggest that they all three belong together. I think, I want to make sure we don't get too far afield on this, because obviously we need to take care of the water system. We're under consent agreements for that as well. We need to take care of the wastewater issue, there's no doubt about that. That's not the issue here. The question is, do we be honest with the people of Falmouth and give them the opportunity to vote on these individual projects individually, or I would suggest we're being disingenuous by trying to lump them together. And quite frankly, like I said, there are individuals out there, and we saw some of it during town meeting, there are folks who have some opposition to the idea of starting a sewer design. What I don't want to do is sort of put people in a pickle where they have to sit there and say, well, if I vote against this, now I'm voting against the clean water supply, when they don't in fact want to vote against the clean water supply, but they do want to vote against the idea of sewers. I don't really like doing that to the people of Falmouth. Let's be honest with them. If they're going to want the sewer system, they'll vote for it. If they're going to want to have the water system, let them vote for it. We've heard from people for the last few weeks that they want to vote in favor of or against the idea of removing the turbines. We're giving them that option. Let's not lump everything together and say, well, you have to take one with the other, or you have to reject them all.
I'll make one comment on that. The difference with both of these is both of them are design. Both the water filtration and the sewage treatment project are designed. No one's saying we're moving forward yet. As an educated person, you do a set of plans, and then sometimes you have to make value engineering on those plans, whatever they might be, whether it be for the water filtration or the sewer system. I quite candidly am very anxious to hear what this will be. I will say, right here, right now, that's when I become very involved in finding out what the dollars and cents are as we continue to move forward, both on water, because the filtration plant is going to have to be paid for by somebody, whether it's the taxpayers or just the users or a combination of both. The same scenario will happen when it comes to the sewage treatment. These are both designed, so I look at them differently than as if we're talking about the windmills are actually an action item. There is something that we've got to do. We've got to take them down. So it's not a design of taking them down. It is a process, and that's what we're trying to do. So it's a funding thing. I'll separate those three issues that way. Anyone else have anything else to say?
Well, the purpose of us getting together and discussing these is so we can get opinions from other board members, and I listened, and I actually have no problem. I'm not going to be adversarial about it. We've seen enough of that. I do want to say, Mr. Chairman, that, trust with the general public sometimes is very hard to win. We have found out that trust is very easily lost, and sometimes when you have the trust, we take it for granted. I think we need to move forward in a more unified fashion. So after the comments made by Doug and the other members, and I understand, Brett, because I had a very strong opinion of this coming in here tonight, but I will support putting the questions together, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
And I just want to make this comment, and the comment is in regard to trust. It's easy to cast aspersions at anybody, and it's easy to shoot the messenger, and I think this board is the messenger. Folks elected us to make decisions. No one said that this board's infallible by any form or fashion, but we try like heck to come to consensus, and we work diligently. The number of hours that this board has worked on this and many other things is a credit to this community. And I think this board has worked hard to build consensus. We've been a board that has been able to build consensus on many issues that folks never thought we could. And I appreciate that. So I'll tell you what, when we talk about trust, I can look myself in the mirror and say, you should trust me because I do everything I possibly can to make the right decision. I'm not going to say it's always right, but I look myself in the eye when I look in that mirror, and I know that I can feel good about what I've done. So that being said, I'll look for any kind of motion the board wants to make. I'd be happy to entertain it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to include both items in one question.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay. The ayes have it. The other ballot question is the question in regard to the wind turbines debt exclusion.
Can I read it?
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I don't know which one. The third one.
Or the fourth?
Okay, yeah, all right, that is the fourth one. We've got to come up with a question number. This would be, shall the town of Falmouth be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2 1/2, so-called the amounts required to pay for the bonds issued in order to pay costs, A, of decommissioning, dismantling, and removing Wind 1 and Wind 2, repaying grants received on account of such wind turbines, and for the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and B, originally constructing Wind 1, including the payments of all costs incidental and related hereto.
I'll make a motion to accept ballot one, this ballot.
Ballot question?
Ballot.
A second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Go ahead.
Just an oddball thought, I guess. I'm wondering, and one of the questions that's been raised, obviously, during this debate is whether, and obviously now, since we don't have town meeting approval to proceed at this point with an override, we'd still have to come back if the electorate decided to move ahead with this particular issue. But I'm wondering if it might not be a better idea to provide a non-binding referendum, if you will, and get a feel for where the public stands on this and take the money issue out of it. And the reason why I ask this question is that, let's say, for example, that the state does decide to have a change of heart and come back and say, well, yeah, we'll help you out. If you take the money out of the equation, would people vote to take down the turbines? Or is it purely a money issue? And that's just, it's a thought that I had.
Yeah.
Well, quite candidly, I think it would be disingenuous for this board to do that thought at this point in time. I think we've talked about doing this. I think we've looked at it long and hard over the last 2+ years. I think that we deliberated at town meeting with all intentions to move to a debt exclusion, and that's in fact what this is. That's the authorization to borrow. We in fact need to go back to town meeting to get their authorization to borrow the money. But once we have it from the voters, we could go back in the fall, we could go back in the spring, we could go back the following year. We only need the vote once from the voters. And I think that we have been loud and clear as a board, unanimous, including with the Finance Committee, to let folks know that this is the process. This is how we're moving forward. Incidentally, it's not to say that we cannot continue to work to get the state involved. As a matter of fact, I would suggest that we write a letter to the governor himself, because some folks think that he is not knowledgeable of what his staff is talking about, and let the record be set straight, that we need to write him a letter and let him know that, what we've heard so far. And then we'll be able to know whether, in fact, he is knowledgeable of what's going on and whether he can help directly himself. But I don't want to lose track of where we are, and I really think we owe it to town meeting, because we worked hard to get an article passed there. I think we owe it to the entire voters of this community, be able to make their decision on how they want to move forward.
I just have a question I'd like to maybe ask council. It would seem to me if we just did a non-binding referendum that did not include any authorization to exempt the funding from Prop 2.5, would that then have us have to go back to the voters again? If we just had a non-binding referendum and we heard the opinions of the voters, then we'd have to go back to town meeting for authorization, and wouldn't we then have to put it on the ballot again to authorize it? Or no? Yeah? So I think it just adds another step to the process, but
a specific question on a debt exclusion that has to be presented to the voters.
to the voters. So I think it would make the process that much longer.
It was just a
Although,
thought that
I
had.
understand what you're saying, yeah.
And
Yes, Doug.
Mr. Putnam's thought, I think, is very valid. If the state hadn't been quite so adamant in their point of view, I could lean in that direction, but they were just so crystal clear. If I thought there was any chance they were going to waver and come back, I could see heading in that direction, but I just don't feel that there's any hope that we're going to get anything.
But, even if they did, we are still bound on those bonds, because we are the, what's the term? We're the ones that obtain the bonds, and we're the ones that have to pay back the loans. The state couldn't pay them back. So we are on the hook for that anyway, regardless of what the state gave us. It would have to come from, it would have to be probably reappropriated and applied in some other fashion. So I don't think, even if it does come later, if it came 2 years later, it would still help.
Okay.
Because it would defray something else.
In our motion, do we need to put question numbers on the motion?
We'll get back to the order,
yeah, the order.
okay? So right now, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. So we have those two items on the ballot. We look for a motion to put the Charter Review Committee ballot questions onto the ballot. They're attached here.
So moved.
And I'll second it.
Motion and a second.
I believe there's 14.
I think
I
you're
think
right.
14, yeah.
So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. We'll come back to numbering the ballot questions after the last item that we will discuss this evening. But next up, I'd like to bring in and confirm an appointment of a chief of police, and I'll turn it over to the town manager. If those folks in the hall wanted to come in, it would be appropriate to do so. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Suso.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pardon me one moment. Mr. Chairman, it's my great pleasure to recommend to the board that you affirm my appointment of Edward Dunn as Chief of Police for the town of Falmouth, and I do have a couple remarks, if I may, regarding that very brief summary of that process. Chief Dunn is a highly experienced law enforcement professional who has served in all ranks within the Falmouth Police Department during his 33-year career. His appointment is the result of a thorough search which included a rigorous and comprehensive assessment center process to determine the individual best suited to lead the department for the years ahead. He's also served as acting chief since November of 2012, as that position became vacant due to retirement. And I look forward with great anticipation to continuing to work with Ed Dunn in his enhanced capacity in providing safety and security to the town of Falmouth, its many neighborhoods and villages. And again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I so recommend.
Mr. Chairman, it is with great pleasure that I move to affirm the appointment of Edward Dunn as the Chief of Police as recommended by the Town Manager.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'd like to make a couple of comments before we move on that motion. I know there was great angst in the community of why we would go through a process of recruitment and evaluation in the chief of police scenario. I think it's an astounding credit to Chief Dunn that we did that, to be able to know that not only was he the best suited officer within the Falmouth Police Department to head the department, but having heard that the consultants thought the pool this time was the best pool of candidates that this town and that they've seen in recent years, is a full credit to our new chief of police, that not only was he selected as a chief from within the department, but he was chosen amongst many other qualified candidates outside of the town of Falmouth. So I think that the town should be very proud. I think the department should be very proud. And I know that Chief Dunn should be very proud to be chosen as the candidate and to be chosen as the chief above all of the other candidates by virtue of his experience, his performance within the assessment process, and his leadership skills that he showed. And I'm happy to say welcome, and I'm glad to see that you beat them all out as well. Thank you. Anybody else want to make any comments?
I was just going to ask, in my selfish way, if we could have a roll call vote. I'd like to be the third vote, to put it over the top. Would you mind?
That's not going to be a problem. Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments?
I think you've said it all.
Okay, we can do a roll call vote.
Flynn, aye.
Putnam, aye.
Braga, aye. Congratulations.
And I'm happy to make it unanimous.
Chairman, may I say a few words?
You sure can, Chief.
First, I want to thank the town manager and the Board of Selectmen for confirming my appointment as Chief of Police. I remain grateful for the ongoing support and confidence I have received during the chief's search process from all the civilians and sworn members of the Falmouth Police Department, our community, and our business leaders. I also want to thank my wife Melinda, my daughter Kelsey, and my son Kyle for their support and all the stress I've put them through. As your police chief, I look forward to continuing and expanding the programs and partnerships that have been established between the police department and the Falmouth community. And once again, I thank you.
Thank you very much, and the honeymoon is over.
You don't get one.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Kevin.
Congratulations,
Thank you all.
Chief.
Appreciate it. Okay, thanks, guys. See you later.
Oh, we have the petition?
That's on the data.
Heather's bringing the language on that.
Oh, good. That's awesome. That's great. Good job. Yeah.
We'll just wait for the room to clear, if that's all right with folks.
Not too many people are gonna, well, they will be.
Okay, next up this evening is to discuss and vote a petition for non-binding public opinion advisory question for Falmouth Spring 2013 ballot on petition of the Pilgrim Anti-Nuclear Action of Occupy Falmouth. Do we have a copy of the,
Heather is bringing back a copy of the single item language, but essentially on one of the attachments that the board has, there's language that I believe starts with shall it be resolved, essentially along those lines. The board bringing we overlooked bringing that single page along.
all right, okay. I have it, thank you. Okay, open it up to some discussion on the board. I want to thank the folks who have put forward this petition for inviting me to one of their workshops. I had an opportunity to go myself last Wednesday, I believe it was, and very informative, and I appreciate the invitation. I'll open it up to discussion from the board. I do know that the board had asked you folks to gain some signatures, and I'm wondering where those, I see the signatures, but the number is on.
569.
Thank you.
And people were very concerned about this question.
Great, thank you. Okay.
Well, I'll just start off by saying I spent 14 years working in the town of Plymouth, and I'm very familiar with what the citizens of Plymouth think about the nuclear power plant as well. They share the same concerns that you have raised here and that others have raised who live within the area of the plant. And I think this is a good thing to do. I think that there are a lot of issues with the plants. Even though it has received its permit, there are a number of issues with it, particularly the fact that the rods are still there. Who knows how long they're going to be there, but the used rods, I guess, I don't know what the correct term is, but I know they have to keep them there because they can't transport them anywhere else. So there are a lot of concerns about the plant, and I know nuclear energy, they've done a lot recently, I think, to improve the design and the usefulness of a plant, but that plant's been there over 30 years, I think. 40 years, 41 years, yeah. So I think we should consider this, and I think we should move it. And if you're ready for a motion, I'll be happy to make the motion to move to place it on the ballot.
Any other questions on the board? I have a little bit of a problem with the process, and I am a process person. And my problem with the process is, and I would like to relate some of those issues, it has nothing to do with my thoughts on this. It has to do with the process on this. 2 years ago, there were folks that wanted to change the Falmouth's town charter. And those folks went out and tried to gain enough signatures to get the attention of town meeting and to be able to put something on the ballot. They were unable to get the 3,000 plus signatures, but they would have liked to have had that question forward in the town. But they were going through the process. The process that I have seen in the past was either you go to town meeting or you gain the appropriate number of signatures, which I believe is 10% of the registered voters. So those are the two processes. This is another process, but I believe it circumvents what this community has done. I'm afraid that if we do this for one group, we'll end up doing it for all. And let me give you another illustration. Selectman Putnam has wanted to move forward an issue that would investigate the high school building project. What would stop him from bringing that question to the Board of Selectmen and putting it on the ballot? I'm not weighing one issue versus another issue, and please don't misconstrue that. What I'm weighing out here is the idea that the process needs to be fair and consistent. I talked tonight about being consistent, moving forward with ballot questions. I'm also talking about being consistent in the way that this board conducts its business. So that's where I have a problem. I think the board could appropriately write a letter to the governor on a board vote, but by moving this to the ballot without going through the due process that we have always done, I think it circumvents what we did. 10 signatures could have got it on a regular petition article to town meeting. 100 signatures for the special town meeting, which would have put it on the ballot. So that's really my thoughts. Brent, and then we'll come back.
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
This is a process that is outlined, and these folks have followed it, coming to petition the board. I think as far as the charter change goes that was suggested, I don't recall those folks petitioning the board. They chose not to go that route. They chose instead to go directly to the people and ask for the signatures. I think they certainly could have, as these folks have, come to the board with the signatures that they collected and said, you know, we've got a significant amount of community support here and we would like your support because the time frame or the resources or whatnot did not allow them to gather the requisite number of signatures. In this case, I think these folks have done their homework. Aside from the fact that they have tried to educate the public and certainly come to us in accordance with the process, they've also gone out and collected signatures and demonstrated that there is a significant community support for this kind of a question. And the fact that it's a non-binding question, I think, is worth noting as well, that there's no harm done if the question passes, there's no harm done if the question fails, but it does give these folks, and certainly the people of Falmouth, the opportunity to share their concerns and opinion about it. And as far as the high school goes, there's nothing stopping me from initiating a similar petition later this year, so, but that's an argument for another time, so. My 2 cents, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I want to say that I respectfully agree with Mr. Putnam tonight.
Wow.
Whoa.
Imagine that.
Hold it, can we hold hands?
No, but if we think back to when they came here, when we were recommending articles for the warrant, and they came and they didn't really have any signatures, and we said, you know what, we really like to have signatures when we put something on the warrant, and so that didn't, but they knew that there was a deadline, and the deadline was tonight for getting it on the ballot. And so they went out and did more than what I would have ever expected. Collecting 500 signatures is a lot of work. So I think it demonstrates that there are people in this community who have a real concern with this issue and would like the opportunity to speak their minds. As you said, it's not binding, but it does send a message to the people who need to know and who have the decision-making power to do something about it. And I think we need to give them that opportunity, and the community the opportunity to have their say as well.
Doug?
I do feel that there does need to be a clear rationale as to when we approve these and when we don't. I would worry that we're setting precedent, and maybe we come up and say 500 signatures ends up being a clear-cut reason. I don't think that we have that set right now. I frankly am swayed by Mr. Putnam's argument also, and by the number of signatures to say, well, let's come up with a policy in the future, and at this time, this is one that sways me enough because of the support that we have, the signatures, to listen to the people who have asked us to do this.
I'm waiting for a motion, so no one has made a motion, so
Well,
whatever the board wants to
I
do.
will move that we put the question on the ballot.
I'll
Do you
second
want me to
that.
read it? Or you?
Oh, sure, read it.
All right, the question is, shall it be resolved that we, the people of the town of Falmouth, respectfully request Governor Deval Patrick to call upon the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to uphold its mandate to shut down Entergy's nuclear power station in Plymouth, Massachusetts, because the public safety, particularly for Cape and Islands residents and visitors, cannot be assured.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye?
Opposed? Aye. 3-2. Motion carries. We will number the ballot questions. I think it's open to board discussion. I would hope that we would put the money questions first.
Yes, I would think so.
And the question is, we have water and wastewater. Do we want to make that ballot question number 1? 2, does anyone have any preference? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would recommend that the water wastewater question be first, the wind turbine question be second, the charter questions be ordered third, and fourth and fifth and so on, and the
Non-binding
the
resolution.
non-binding resolution, thank you, be bringing up the rear.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that?
No, that's a total of 18 questions, if I got my math correct, because I think so that's plenty of room on the ballot. Won't we have 3 pages?
Can the math teacher say whether you got it right or not? You got it math
I
right.
did?
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Is there any additional business before this board this evening? Just a reminder that this coming Monday is a holiday in the state of Massachusetts. Town Hall is closed, and this board will not be meeting until a week from Monday again. It's not like we haven't met at all this week. So, and the next member of board meeting will be a week from Monday, the 22nd of April. Do I look for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.